Hey guys, thanks for joining us for this week's PB&J podcast, where myself and my sister Michelle will join you guys each week to talk about true crime cases and paranormal cases and pretty much anything else we feel like talking about. So buckle up and stay tuned each week for a new podcast. We hope you will enjoy it, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe where you can. And if you feel like donating to us, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/PBANDJ. Thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, happy Sunday.
What's up?
Today we are going to talk about something that I have a big interest in, and that's ghosts, whether you believe or not believe. It's pretty, according to statistics, it's pretty 50-50 down the line in the United States, whether people believe or not believe. Some of the things that I've looked into, I think, are pretty interesting, and we'll talk about those today. So let's dive right in and get started. Folklore defines a ghost as the spirit or soul of a dead person or animal that can appear to the living. In ghost lore, descriptions of ghosts vary from wispy, cloud-like shapes to full-on translucent people-like forms. So it just, basically it's one of those, like when you see something out of the corner of your eye and then you turn, there's nothing there. They say that could have been a ghost that walked past you. So, and here down the line, we'll get into things that we've seen and things that we know. America, I thought this was pretty interesting, Jen. America's first known documented ghost story dates back to 1799 in Franklin, Maine. It was a young lady that was basically haunting her family after she passed on. Not very much is known about it, just it's known that that was the first documented ghost story. Throughout history, everyone from everyday people to foreign dignitaries have claimed to see ghosts in the White House. The most notable being Abraham Lincoln, who has appeared to several different people in Lincoln's bedroom.
Okay, so here's my thing. Like, when was the White House actually built? The White House that stands today.
The actual White House, I do not know. But it would have had, I mean, Lincoln was our 14th president during the Civil War, so it was before the end.
Well, maybe on that ground, but not that actual building.
Not that actual building.
I would assume. I'm going to have to research that because
that would be interesting to know.
You know, whether he's attached to the ground.
Or the house. Right.
Well, structure. I mean, there may be still pieces of the structure
that are original, still there, and they just built onto it. There's also a black ghost cat that people see roaming the halls late at night, like in the vaults area, like underground.
Yeah.
And that's been they've had accounts of that like for, I mean, hundreds of years. So it's been there for quite some time. A lot of people, like myself and my sister, grew up in church. So, and a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people say that if you believe in God, you can't believe in ghosts. Well, I have a theory for that. In the King James Version of the Bible, the word ghost appears 108 times. However, the word is never used in the sense of a returning spirit of someone who has died, but in reference to dying, becoming a ghost, or receiving the Holy Spirit, who is often called the Holy Ghost. Spirits are often discussed throughout the Bible. The Bible teaches very clearly that there are spirit beings who can connect and appear in our physical world, such as angels and demons. 2 Corinthians 11:14-15 says, demons masquerade as angels of light and servants of righteousness, appearing as a ghost and impersonating a deceased human. And we talked about it, I think, a little a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the Villisca Axe murder. I never believed that if you are seeing a child spirit, I always have been told that that's not a child. It's either the person that is appearing to you felt more comfortable when they were or that was their happiest time when they were a child, or that it is a demon trying to get you to trust it before it shows its true form.
I've also heard too that sometimes when they show up in child form, that's your connection to them.
Yes.
Is when they were a child.
When they were a child, yes.
So that's what you would most recognize.
Yes,
now.
yeah.
So
something
that's
interesting.
And just a little side note, this White House was built in 1972.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. October 13th, 1792. I'm dyslexic. 1792. So, yeah.
So Lincoln would have been there. That would have been his house. So,
yeah. I had no idea it was that old, to be honest with you. I really, really didn't.
Lincoln has also been seen and I don't know if the original building is still standing anymore, but he's also been seen in the Ford Theater where he was murdered.
Yeah.
And people I've heard that in Granbury, Texas, where the theater is, where supposedly John Wilkes Booth frequented, that he's been seen, that Lincoln's ghost has been seen there too. Which is interesting because he would have never been to that theater. It's almost like he's just following John Wilkes Booth. So
they're still reenacting the
whole thing.
Assassination.
Yeah. A lot of places that are tied to the Lincoln assassination boast of ghost of the conspirators, the people that were involved in all this. The houses where the conspirators lived or met. So, I mean, a lot of that around that is a lot of folklore, but, there's been people that have come out that you would think would never believe in ghosts have said, I've seen the ghost of Lincoln in the White House.
Right.
So that's a very interesting situation to me because that's some place where people aren't going to they're not going to tell you stuff like that. Because a lot of people, there's a lot of stigma attached to believing in ghosts or seeing ghosts and things like that. So a lot of people don't come out and say, I've seen a ghost.
Right.
Because, you don't know. Now,
you don't want people looking at them like, okay, you're a nutcase.
Exactly. And a lot of people do look like, unless you had a situation where several people at one time have seen the same thing.
But I think you're always going to have somebody say, it's fake.
You're crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy. I mean, you're always going to have those people that will look for any other possible explanation.
Absolutely.
So
now I've had several instances where I believe I've come in contact with somebody that is not living. One of them that we still have issues with to this day, when my husband and I started dating, we would go to old cemeteries to do headstone scratchings to see who the oldest cemetery, who the oldest one in living or deceased in there was.
Yeah, y'all are
a lot of cemeteries in the Fort Worth, Arlington area have very famous people buried in them. One being Lee Harvey Oswald is buried in Rose Hill Cemetery. I believe Jack Ruby is buried in one of the cemeteries in Fort Worth. Well, one particular afternoon, we came upon this little rundown cemetery that was surrounded by a fence by Arlington Lake. And while we were walking through and talking, there's this large oak tree in the corner of the cemetery. I thought I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. When I looked over, there was a small child, a little girl, standing halfway behind the tree, kind of peeking around at me and Rob. When I looked back, Rob was like, do you see a little girl standing over there? So we both saw her, but when we went to look for her, she was gone. Now, whether people want to believe this or not, we believe that at that point we basically obtained an attachment where this little girl has followed us from several places, often doing things to people if they have ill will towards us, doing things to them to kind of run them off or run them away from us, to get them away from us. One instance in particular, I'm not quite sure if it was the ghost that follows us or my grandmother. My son has an ex-wife who was being very hateful to us, and she happened to be living with us at the time. And out of the thin blue air, she was sitting in a rocking chair that belonged to my grandmother, and all of a sudden the rocking chair flew backwards and basically rolled her out of it. Yeah, I think so too.
I was gonna say, just throwing that out there.
So we believe it was my grandmother, but it could be. One local thing is I used to work for Legends Barbecue here in Owasso in German Corner. And one morning we were getting ready to do our opening duties. We were still closed, but we were getting our opening duties already. And I looked up to see an older gentleman standing at the hostess stand. And I was in the kitchen. He was in the front room. I told him we're not open yet, but I would be up there in just a few minutes to see if I could help him. When I went up there, he was gone. But our door to come into the restaurant was still locked from the inside. I wasn't the only one that saw him. Rob saw him, and so did the cook that was there. And they were like, "Why is this? How did he even get in?" Because we were the only ones there. We were thinking that the girls left the door unlocked the night before. So that was pretty interesting for us.
That's kind of similar to what I had happen just before I had Nathan. Laying in my bed in our rental house, and squirrel. Anyway, so I'm laying in bed, and you know that state where you're like asleep, and then you kind of wake up, but you're not fully awake.
Yeah.
In that state, I'm laying there, and just outside of our bedroom was the laundry room, which that whole part of the house was an addition. The laundry room wasn't, but our bedroom was an addition. It was I believe it was just a one-bedroom house, possibly two-bedroom. The laundry room might have at one time been a bedroom, but there was no closet or anything in there. So our bedroom was an addition. So this is an older home. Our bedroom was an addition. And in the laundry room, standing at my washing machine, was a guy that I can only compare him to from that movie Field of Dreams.
Yes.
Doc.
Yes. Yeah. I know exactly
with the old timey hat and all that stuff. That's what he looked like. Yeah. And I couldn't see like specific, distinct facial features. I just knew it was an older man. But I instantly thought of Doc from Field of Dreams when he was an older guy. Not when he was a young baseball player, but when the older guy that they talk to when they go to the city or whatever that they see him in, and all that. So and then like I closed my eyes and opened them right back up, and he was gone. And I didn't feel like afraid or scared or nervous or anything like that. I didn't feel anything. So I never quite knew if it was just a dream. Yeah. Like if I had maybe watched that movie and was thinking about it, and it was just a dream, and I couldn't tell you at all. Like I couldn't even venture a guess whether or not I had actually watched that movie around that time. So, but that's kind of my. And I have seen things out of the corner of my eye, thinking that it was a person and it wasn't.
Yeah. There's been instances. We lived in there was one instance where we lived in a little apartment in Collinsville, and we did not know at the time. We did not know until we had lived there a year that somebody had passed away in our apartment. Because I mean, there are some places they have to tell you, but I think in a situation like that where you're renting, they don't have to tell you stuff like that.
I think they only have to tell you like if you're purchasing a property in a violent crime.
Right.
I don't know if they have to tell you if someone passed there.
After this happened, we found out that somebody had passed away in our apartment. I was sitting in the chair, and where I was sitting, you could see down the hallway. When you walk down the hallway, the first door that you came to was the master bedroom. Then you walk down a little bit ways. On the left-hand side was the bathroom, and then the back was a smaller bedroom. The smaller bedroom was where my boys stayed. I saw something out of the corner of my eye walk out of my bedroom and walk down the hallway to my son's room. don't know what it was, but at that moment, I kind of stood up and I was like, if you're going to do something, you can do it to me and my husband, but you're not going to mess with my kids. It made me mad because I did not want, they were little at the time, and I did not want them messing with this. Well, later on that night, we were laying in bed and I was telling my husband about it, and I sleep with my feet pulled up a little bit. Well, I stretched out, and when I did, I ran my foot along the bottom of the bed, and I ran my foot over a small child's hand. Jumped straight up out of the bed, thinking that one of our kids was in there. Rob goes down the hallway. The kids are sound asleep. So I'm like, don't touch me. Don't do anything like that. I don't want anything to do with that. So that, those were instances where things like that happen. Well, I don't know if Jenny knows, when things like this would happen, I would talk to my grandmother, because my grandmother is probably the most religious or spiritual person that I knew in my life. There were a lot of instances where I believe that if it wasn't for her, we probably would have never been in church until we were older. But when my grandfather passed away, we were actually supposed to go to the hospital the next day to see him, and he had passed away during that night. Whether you want to call it a vivid dream or whatever anybody wants to call it, my grandfather came to me that night after he passed away. Sitting on the end of my bed, I woke up and he was sitting there, and he told me that he had to go and to not be upset and to always take care of my grandmother. And the next day, my mom and my sister showed up at my apartment to tell me that Grandpa had passed away. Well, when my mom came through the door, I told her, I said, I know. And she said, you know what? I said, I know Grandpa passed away last night. And she was like, how do you know that? And I told her what happened. And I had talked to my grandma about it. And my grandma had always told me that she did believe in that. She believed that in your time of need or in your time of sorrow, God allows a family member to come back to you in some way, shape, or form to comfort you. That happened when my cousin passed away. My cousin Philip was killed in a car accident. He was hit by a drunk driver. And I had a very vivid dream the night that he was killed, that he was met at the gate of heaven by my grandfather and my dad. So much so, I was so adamant about it. My grandmother made me contact my uncle, who was his father, and tell him that to give him comfort. And I did. I contacted my Uncle Donald, and I told him what I dreamed. And my grandmother doesn't believe it's a dream. She believed that God allowed me to be there when he was met at the gate. She always did that. She was very adamant about things like that. I spoke with her in private about it because I didn't know how other people would feel about it. On many occasions, I told her things that I had witnessed and things that I had dreamed about and stuff like that. And my grandmother, like I said, she always said that she believed that God would send somebody back to comfort you. Me and my sister were allowed to see my great-grandmother before she passed, Grandma Baker, before she passed. And my grandma always said that my Granny Baker, when she was dying, kept talking about her mom and dad. She said that she truly believed that God allowed her mom and dad to come back for her. It's emotional for me because, like, when my grandmother was in her last days, she was what the hospital and the nursing home thought was hallucinating, but we truly believed that my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather were coming to her, because she would doze off and she would talk about her mom, and she would talk about her daddy and a puppy that they had when she was growing up. So I believe that that was a comforting time for her. So God was allowing that to happen. One thing, and Jenny, this always makes me smile because Jenny can attest to this. My grandmother had this thing about cardinals. Yes. And she always said that if a cardinal was in your yard, then a loved one from heaven was visiting you. Yeah. After my grandmother passed away, I swear to you, I saw more cardinals. And most people in our family did. I know you did, Rita did, my uncle did. Everywhere we went, every time we turned around, there was a cardinal there. So I believe that was her saying, I told you I would be there. And when
Brandon's dad was close to passing, and we didn't at the time know he was passing, but we went to the care facility that he was at, and to get him like all checked in and get him settled in there and all that stuff. And he kept trying to talk to people like at the foot of his bed when nobody was out at the foot of his bed.
Right.
But he was like trying to talk to people, and he would say to Brandon, "Do you see that? Do you see so and so?" And Brandon's like, "No, no, Dad, nobody's there." That kind of stuff. And he ended up passing like either the next day or the day after that. It was very close in time frame from when that happened to when he actually passed. So I can get down with that. I think that happens. That people can bring you with them. Like they come back and be like, okay, let me escort you. Or whatever. So,
and I asked Grandma one time point blank. I said, because growing up, you're always taught different things, especially if you grew up in church, you're taught different things. And I asked Grandma one time when I was older. I said, do you believe in ghosts? And she said, I absolutely do. She said, I do believe that people can come back when you need them. That you can see people, especially if it's in great. If you're in a time where it really, really hurts you. Now, one of these things, and I think I've talked to Jenny about this before, and there's 2 points I want to make before we go today. One of these things is I worked at a restaurant here. I talked about that earlier. And not too long after my dad passed away, it'd probably been about 4 or 5 years, there was a gentleman that used to come through the drive-thru. My husband worked there first, and he worked the drive-thru. There was a gentleman that came through the drive-thru. My husband would always say, you have to see this guy. He looks just like your dad. I swear if you saw him, it would just absolutely take your breath away because he looks so much like your father, talks like him, looks like him, dresses like him. Well, one day, and it was close to Christmas, and my father, for those of you that don't know, our dad passed away on Christmas Eve in 2001. So it was close to Christmas. This man had not come through the drive-thru in over a year, and he came through the drive-thru, and he was playing an old Leonard Skinner song. So my dad, anybody that knew him knows that. And when he pulled up, I literally had to walk away from the drive-thru. He looked so much like my dad, and I think at the time I was having a really hard time because we were still dealing with all this. At the time, I needed that to happen because I needed a little piece of my dad to get going. And I think that was our dad's way of saying, you're good, girl. Move on with your life. And we've seen things in the past, like this last Christmas, we all got together with my aunt, and she had some home movies. And it had been, oh God, a long time since we had heard our dad's voice. And she was laughing. She's like, no crying. And you just can't help it. When you don't realize how much you miss of that. Until you hear it. So, and I get a little teary.
Don't get all emotional. Jesus. But I mean, along with what Shell's saying is, I used to work at a local hospital, and I used to work in the radiation therapy department. And our dad passed away from cancer, lung cancer, and that had metastasized to pretty much everywhere. So we did not get that opportunity to fight the cancer. It was very quick. Within 48 hours of diagnosis, almost to the minute, he was gone. So that's how much time. And I'm legitimately 48 hours.
It was 48 hours.
So there was no time for us to do anything as far as fighting this or trying to get him out of the woods or anything like that. There was none of that happening. There wasn't time for any of it. So years later, I want to say it was about 3 years after my dad passed is when it wasn't even that long. Maybe a year. But anyway, pretty quickly after my dad passed, I started working in radiation therapy. So we had one patient that didn't look like Dad, but all his mannerisms reminded me of Dad. And one day he was a lung cancer patient, and HIPAA and all that stuff. I'm not going to get into who he was, but he very much reminded me of my dad in mannerism. And he came in one day and he was like, I don't know why I need to tell you this, but I need to tell you, he had just gotten his diagnosis. He came in, he was doing chemo and radiation therapy to try to shrink the tumors or whatever. And he came in one day and he's like, I don't know. I checked him in and he said to me, I don't know why I need to tell you this, but I need to tell you this. We're going to fight this for him.
Oh, Lord.
And I was like, excuse me? And he said, you lost your dad or somebody, you lost somebody with lung cancer, right? A man in your life. And I was like, yeah, my dad passed from lung cancer. And it hadn't even been, I don't even think it actually been a year because I had Nathan. Yeah, I didn't have Nathan yet. So it hadn't even been a year. And he said, we're going to fight this for him. And I walked out of that office and I just hugged him as tight as I could hug him. And, you know, I mean, it was just crazy to me that I had not said anything.
Yeah, nobody knew anything about it.
It wasn't something I was in a position to talk about at the time because I wasn't ready to talk about it. It was still very, very new. You know, when we're talking less than a year since he had passed. And I was not talking about it. I was not sharing it with a bunch of people like, hey, my dad passed from lung cancer, blah, blah, blah. I had maybe told like 3 or 4 people that I worked with about it, that I had lost someone I loved to cancer. And he was like, I don't know why I need to tell you this, but I need to tell you we're going to fight this for him. I'm going to beat it, and I'm going to beat it for him too. And I was like, you have no idea how much that meant to me. And he was like, it doesn't matter how much it meant to you. I had to tell you that. Yeah. Something told me I needed to tell you that. And he did. He actually did fight it, and he won. And it was just the most amazing thing because he was doing it. He wasn't just doing it for my dad. He was doing it for himself, but he was also fighting in honor of other people too. And that to me was just like crazy to me how much I needed to hear that at the time, but I didn't know I needed to hear it, you know. So I truly do. I agree with Shell in that when in your times of need, that they will find a way, and God provides a way for them to say what you need to hear and feel what you need to feel at those times. So I mean, I'm done with that.
Yeah, and honestly, people that know us understand why we needed that piece of comfort right there, because we were at that time, both of us were still pretty angry. That because for some of you that know or don't know, our dad, for the most part, growing up, was addicted to some form of drug, and we didn't get a lot of those on-hand dad moments. But the last 5 years of his life, he was sober, and we got those moments. And thankfully, my kids got those moments. It hurts me every day that Nathan wasn't able to, who is my sister's son, wasn't able to see that. But things,
by the way, is mannerism-wise,
Dad made over.
Our dad.
Dad made over, absolutely.
And it's funny because there's an old picture that I got when Grandma passed. Aunt Rita gave me a whole bunch of pictures, and one of them is my dad at about 16, I think, 16 or so. And it's a black and white picture, and Nathan was like, "Is that me?" Because it looks like Nathan. But just looking at Nathan, you wouldn't think he looks like my dad. I mean, he favors my side of the family, I think. Yeah. But when you see him next to his dad, he looks like his dad. So it's odd. But he was like, "Is that me?" And I'm like, "No, that's your grandpa." And he's like, "Wow." And I didn't realize that the likeness there, but mannerisms wise, he is my dad. I'm raising my dad. It's ridiculous.
And we've talked about this before, that like each one of our boys has a part of our father that was
like Cody endearing. Looks just like him.
Cody looks just like my dad. He's got the whole hippie vibe, long hair, not not a big secret. He likes to partake in the herbal supplements like my father did. My oldest son, Justin, got his just almost obsessive love for fishing. Has fishing rods that I swear he's never used, but he has used them, and they're going to be used for something. Nate's got Dad's real laid back mannerism. Nothing gets him upset. He's very chill, things like that. So that in a way, and the fact that we're so close, and all three boys have always been around each other, we have a piece of our dad with us at all times, because the boys like that. We've raised our kids with a healthy love for classic rock, which my dad was always playing something. You know, he was a very avid AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Leonard Skinner, Dwight Yoakam, and our kids love this type of music. So we've instilled that in them. But, you know, the one thing is that I want to say is, if somebody comes up to you and they say, I don't know why, but I need to tell you this, keep an open mind when they tell you things, because sometimes God uses other people to get across a message from your loved ones. And you know, just listen, because you never know, because sometimes people, they don't even understand why they need to talk to you about this. And it's really weird to them. And I want to tell this one little story, and then I'll leave it. I'll let it go. I went one time, and I don't, sometimes I believe in them, and sometimes I don't. I went one time and I saw a lady that reads tarot cards, and nobody was around me. My sons and my husband left before I even got into her sight. So I walked up to her on my own. I sat down, and it was probably about 2 years after my father had passed away. I sat down, and before she picked up the cards, she said, there is a man that is around you very, very strongly. He follows you everywhere you go. And he wants you to know that no matter where you are in life, he will always be there. He will always see what you're doing. He will always see what your kids are doing. He will always see what your sister is doing. I haven't told this woman anything about me. She just saw this when I walked up to her. Jenny asked me a couple of weeks ago, and I don't want to upset her, but she asked me a couple of weeks ago if I thought that Dad would be very proud of Nathan. And I do. I think him and my grandmother are probably the biggest cheerleaders up in heaven, cheering these kids on, cheering this kid on. I think that they see him, they see what he's doing. I think they're with him all the time. I've always told my kids from a young age that my dad is their guardian angel. So when your guardian angel, when you're doing something that's a little twisted and your guardian angel's like, that's my dad. And now we always truly believe that now my grandmother also watches over our family. So just,
if you don't know, Nathan is, of course, my only biological child. I do have a stepson, but Nathan was born a year after my dad passed away. I found out I was pregnant in March, I believe. My dad passed away in December. I found out I was pregnant in March. He was actually due Christmas Day, which would have been a day and a year and a day after my dad passed. And I was praying and praying and praying that he would not be born on Christmas Eve or the day after Christmas, because the day after Christmas is when we have my dad's memorial service. So I was praying that he wouldn't be born on either one of those 2 days. And he actually ended up coming 3 months early. So by the time Christmas got here, he was about almost out of the NICU. And we were so consumed with him being in the NICU that we didn't have a whole lot of time to be obsessing about the fact that it was the year anniversary of my dad's passing. But he's now 18, and this kid he's played football his whole life pretty much. Like, I can't even remember a time where he didn't play football. He was probably not walking or talking very much. Even then, he was playing football. But so he's played football his whole life. He just received a scholarship to play football for college, along with academic money. So he pretty much has written his own ticket to college. And he has plans on being a police officer when he gets done with college. So he'll be going to college and studying criminal justice, and he wants to be a police officer afterwards if he doesn't go into the military. So yeah, so this kid, he's doing a lot of things, and this year is very significant for him. Number one, because he's 18. He graduates from high school this year. So there's a lot just being a mom and this being my only child, having, him go through all these significant steps in his life, and for my dad not to be here, and for my grandma not to be here, is
Pivotal role
she was life, so. She and him and her were close. Yes. They had a nice connection, and I have a picture of him when he was very little. Sitting next to her, she had actually come out to one of his football games, which was very difficult for her to do, but she did that, and he cherishes that picture. Like they were very close. He called her Grandma Roletta when he was little, but not so much when he got a little bit older. But he misses her a lot, and so she was significant in his life. And for those two people, and not only that, his grandparents on the other side are gone as well. Yeah. So he has one grandparent left. That's my mom and my stepdad. So two grandparents, a grandparent and step-grandparent. But they have always lived in another state.
Yeah, so they're far away.
So there's not that same connection, although he does have a connection with them. It's a different connection with them than what he had with my grandma, his great-grandma. And he didn't even really have that connection with Brandon's parents, but they were also here. So, he that's all he has is just my mom and my stepdad. So to have him have all those significant people that were significant in my life in those roles,
right.
Like my grandparents. I was close to both my grandparents. I was close to my great grandparents. Those people were all very significant in my life and in my graduation and the next steps in my life when I was a young adult like that. So for him not to have that, I miss it for him. He doesn't miss it because he doesn't have it anyway. But I miss it for him. And I constantly this year think about what would my dad and Brandon's dad be thinking about the fact that this kid just wrote his own ticket to college.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and I won't go any further than that because I'm going to get emotional.
It gets emotional.
But and I think they are. Honestly, I think they push him further.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think he gets a sense of them being around him and them looking over him and making them proud and really, taking that to heart, and I can't because I'm looking at a picture of him and it's just, I'm going through the whole empty nest phase right now because once he's out of the house, it's just me and Brandon.
That's it. Yeah.
But we're unbelievably proud of him, and we hope our parents are proud, and we know just in our hearts that they are, and that our grandparents are proud, and all these people that are gone but are still here with us, So don't ever forget that just because someone is gone doesn't mean they're actually gone.
Oh, absolutely.
They're always with you if you carry them with you. So
because we're really bad about this, and I'll somebody has said one time that we're a very musically inclined family. There was always been music around us, and there are times when I'll be upset and a song will play that I remember my dad singing to us when we were little, and it's like, "Hey, girl,
we're just playing, that song coming on and him singing it."
Exactly, or, just joking around and stuff like that. So, honestly, to not sound cliche, I don't know who needs to hear this right now, but if there is somebody in your life that you haven't talked to in a long time, reach out to them. It's too late once they're gone, and you don't want that memory of, I didn't do something. My husband this past week lost a cousin of his that he was very close to, and it really kind of put it in perspective because he was younger than him. It really kind of put in perspective a lot of things that, life's too short. Don't wait till tomorrow because you're not promised tomorrow. I would rather be talking to you as a live person than trying to reach out to you from beyond the grave. So,
and there's been lots of times like that someone's been in the hospital and we've said, okay, well, we'll go tomorrow. And we don't get that tomorrow. They're gone that day.
Yeah.
Like that's like you wake up the next day and you're going to go see them and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that happened with my grandpa. It happened with my great uncle that we were really close to.
Yeah.
You know, they were in the hospital and then they were gone. So from that point forward, I have never missed a chance. Like if someone's in the hospital, I go right then. Like I don't wait until tomorrow, because I've experienced more than once that tomorrow's not guaranteed, you know. So don't wait until tomorrow. And this, you know, we didn't start this podcast today to, you know, get into all this, but the heart of the matter is you're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Right.
Don't waste time being angry and upset and holding a grudge or what have you, because you don't know that when the next time you're going to see that person is. So, you know, talk it out, get it off your chest. I don't know why I'm saying this right now, but I guess I need to. So if you're upset with somebody about something and that person is significant in your life, don't put that off.
No.
Say what you need to say, get it off your chest, and leave it where it is. If that's, you know, you don't speak after that, then that's where it's supposed to be. But not saying it is not where you're supposed to be. So say what you need to say, and don't ever forget to tell people that you love them. Don't ever forget that, because you can not like someone and still love them. And they need to hear it, and you need to say it. So love your family, kiss your babies. We love you guys.
Yes.
And we thank you for hanging with us and joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. There's an opportunity for you to donate if you want to do that.
Yes.
It's buymeacoffee.com /PB and J, and is spelled out A-N-D. So if you want to subscribe to that, we can do one-on-one calls with you. If you're a subscriber or a donator, we can, whatever. So whatever you want to do, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, join our Facebook group. We love you guys, and we hope to continue on this journey with you, and we hope you have a wonderful week, and
be blessed.
That's it.
All right. Love you guys. Have a good week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Well, that's all we have for today.
Drop by our Facebook page and let us know what keeps you up at night. Bye, y'all.